November 11th, 2009, a public hearing of the Board of Architecture Review. Appreciate everyone in attendance this evening. The board was established by zoning ordinance in 1958, and our first historic district was Gratz Park. We now have a total of 14 historic districts throughout the county. The board, which is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Urban County Council, is a part of the Division of Historic Preservation. The Preservation Office maintains a full-time staff to assist you with your projects. The board encourages and recommends that all applicants use them as a resource. The Preservation Office is located at 101 East Vine Street in room 220. Pardon me. It's our procedure to consider applications in the order in which they are listed on our agenda. In each case, we'll attempt to sound the presentation. If there are no additional comments from the applicant and no questions from the board or no questions from anyone in the audience, we'll try to sound them. If there are any questions from audience members, the board, or the applicant, we'll have a presentation by the staff, and then we'll hear any additional comments from the applicant. The board will then ask questions or make comments regarding the application, and then hear any comments from any interested parties. The chair will then ask board members to enter a motion. If you'd like to address the board this evening, I'd ask that you please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the public record. I would also ask that you please write your name on the sign-in sheet by the door so that all the information may be recorded correctly. I'd like to note the following staff approvals before we begin their certificates of appropriateness reviews this evening. There are many items that the staff can approve, eliminating the necessity for most applicants to appear before the board. And this evening there are a total of 6 approved applications, and I'll need to read those quickly into the public record. There are 3 in the Aylesford Historic District. First one's at 608 East High Street, repair roof. At 344 Lafayette Avenue, renovate structure. And at 456 East Maxwell Street, install lamp post. In the Belcourt Historic District, at 604 Sayre Avenue, replace a tree. In Cadentown, at 646 Caden Lane, replace storage shed. And finally, in the South Hill Historic District, at 126 Maxwell Street, remove tree. We'll proceed with our certificate of appropriateness applications. The first application this evening is in the South Hill Historic District at 515 South Mill Street. The scope of the work is to pave and landscape rear and side yards. Is that applicant present?
The applicant is not present, however, has received a staff report. She's just not able to attend the meeting today.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Staff has recommended approval with a single condition that final details showing how the pergola is attached to the existing porch and method of installing brick walkway and stepping stones be submitted to staff for review prior to the purchase of any materials or start of any said work and issuance of the COA. Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions regarding this case?
Mr. Chair, I will need to abstain from the vote on this project because I am within the notification range.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. See, would anyone in the audience like to speak to this case this evening? Don't see anyone. Mr. Hosfield, I'd certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, regarding case number 13150515-F, 515 South Mill Street, I move that the application be approved as submitted with the recommendations from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. I shall second the motion. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next case is at 621 West Main Street, Unit 101 in the Western Suburbs Historic District. The scope of the work is to expand a deck, move and add fencing. It's come to the staff's attention that there is an issue regarding the property line on this plan, and we will not be able to hear this case this evening. Is anyone here to speak to the case? 621 West Main Street? Okay. Don't see anyone, so would certainly entertain a motion to postpone that till the next hearing, which is December 9th, 2009.
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Magrish, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next case is also in the Western Suburbs Historic District. This is at 636 West Main Street. The scope of the work is to change openings, construct decks, and demolish a shed. Is that applicant present? Sir, if you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Jack Velkovich, and the address is 636 West Main Street.
Sir, thank you very much. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendations regarding your case?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with them?
I am.
Excellent. Let's see if anyone on the board has any comments or questions for you.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
I don't have any comments.
No
Is
comment.
anyone in the audience here to speak to this case this evening? Don't see anyone. Just to go over quickly, the staff is recommending approval with 3 conditions: that all exposed wood be painted or stained, final window and door details come back to staff, and if any other LFUCG divisions have any comments, any changes that would come that they require would come back to staff before issuance of the COA. That said, would certainly entertain a motion regarding this case, please.
Mr. Chair, in reference to case number 122703636-B at 636 West Main Street, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as presented with the staff conditions.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next case this evening, pardon me, is in the Seven Parks Historic District at 130 Shawnee Place. The scope of the work is to construct an addition. Is that applicant present? Sir, if you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Don Henry, 3305 Downing Place.
Thank you very much, sir. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendations regarding your
Yes,
case?
I
Are you in agreement with them?
Yes.
Excellent. Let's see if anyone on the board has any comments or questions for you.
Okay.
Gentlemen? Okay. Is anyone here in the audience to speak to this case this evening? Don't see anyone. I think a motion might be in order if anyone's willing.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to case number 1702013-0-A, 130 Shawnee Place, I move that the application be approved as submitted, including the staff recommendations, and to specify those recommendations as written in this report. Staff recommends approval as submitted with the following conditions. Right end of shed roof be hipped as noted in findings. The foundation wall exposed above grade be constructed of either stone veneer or split-face concrete block, and all exposed wood be painted.
Thank you, Mr. Husfield. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next case this evening is in the North Side Historic District at 449 West 3rd Street. The scope of the work is to change stall openings and construct stoop and steps. Is that applicant present?
The applicant is not present.
Okay. Well, we've got another case here. It's certainly the board's pleasure if you want to hear this one or wait just a minute to see if the applicant is attending this evening.
We probably should wait just a little bit.
Okay.
And maybe come back to this.
All right. We'll come back to 449 West 3rd Street shortly. The next case this evening is at 322 West 3rd Street and also in the North Side Historic District. The scope of the work is to demolish an addition and construct an addition. Is that applicant present? Could you have your name and address, please?
My name is Frank Culverson, architect, 3104 Pinkard Pike.
Sir, thank you very much.
John Pappas.
Your address too, please, sir. I'm sorry, your address too, please, sir.
1713 Clay Spring Lane.
Sir, thank you very much. Have you all had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendations regarding your case?
Yes, we have.
Are you in agreement with them?
I'm not in agreement with the window treatments in the French door question.
Okay, well, let's, if it's okay with you all, we'll have the staff present the case so everybody is on the same page, make sure we're talking about the same materials, and then we'll discuss it in just a few minutes. Excellent, thank you.
This is the property at 322 West 3rd Street. Just to familiarize yourself with this, there's standing across the street, front view, west wall. In the proposed work, we saw this in conceptual review. At last meeting, the proposed work would be removing the addition you see in the foreground and constructing a new addition in the similar footprint as what you see here. Rear view, this is facing the alley or the courtyard area, facing south. Again, here's image. So at this time, the work they're proposing is to demolish the existing one-story frame addition and construct a new two-story frame addition and construct a new stoop. The addition will have a similar footprint and will have hardy plank, and they want to use the existing chimney but retain that, but rebuild it and install multi-pane French doors and side lights leading out to a small stoop to the west. Here's a site plan. Here's the proposed plan. This is second floor, first floor. Oh, wait a minute. This is the initial one, I think you said. And here is the proposed elevation. Here's some other renderings of this with the proposed structure, proposed addition in place. Guidelines are included for your reference. The proposal to construct an addition onto this 1810 structure requires discussion. The proposed plan calls for a new addition to be slightly taller than the existing structure and the setback on either side of the addition to be only 4 inches. The proposal on either side, east and west, the proposal is not within the guidelines 2A4B that states addition should be secondary, smaller and simpler to the original building in scale, design, and placement. Exterior walls should be stepped in a minimum of 12 inches from the edges of the existing building, and roof lines should be stepped down from the peak of the existing roof line so that the existing main roof remains evident. The proposed plan calls for the addition to have 2 French doors and upper story balcony on the west elevation and windows with shutters on the east, and the proposed rhythm and pattern of the openings have no relationship with the existing building and does not meet guideline 2B1F, which states location, proportion of entrances and windows, divisions and bays and porches, openings such as entrances and windows and architectural features help establish balance, rhythm, scale, proportion, and emphasis in structure. Patterns of these components of the buildings along the block and within the districts create a characteristic rhythm for the streetscapes and neighborhoods. It is very important that new construction respect the balance, proportion, and scale of the existing buildings along the block and within the district in regards to these components. Entrances and divisional bays. Entrances should be compatible in scale, size, and proportion to established patterns. of openings and adjacent surrounding buildings. Windows and window openings shall be compatible in scale, size, and proportion to established patterns of openings and adjacent surrounding buildings. New buildings should have similar ratio of window openings to solid wall space in adjacent surrounding buildings as well as buildings in the district. In addition, the use of the multi-pane French doors is not within the guidelines. Use of multi-pane French doors and windows creates a false sense of history. Guidelines 2B1K, which states architectural details help give a building character and scale. Details include, but not limited to, corner boards, rake boards, cornices, downspouts, railings, columns, steps, doors, window moldings, and decorative elements. Architectural details may be appropriate when they give buildings in which they are placed a good sense of belonging on the street and with the district. Details should be appropriately scaled to the proportion, structure, and compatible with other adjacent buildings and districts. Installation of ornament or details that give a building an imitation historic appearance is not allowed. New construction may incorporate contemporary material. Recommendation, staff recommends disapproval as submitted of the present plan, and the applicant and owner are present.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Sure, if you'd like to come back forward, we'd certainly be ready to talk about this with you.
Jump in whenever you want. Well, on the several of the issues, we were here several weeks ago, and we went through a kind of a schematic review with you all. And in that review, or the height of the structure, I'll address that first, was a little bit taller than our existing structure. And so what we've done is we've taken the roof down. We've pulled it down about even with the existing roof. And when we discussed 2 weeks ago, what we were trying to do is trying to develop the slope so it slopes away from the existing structure and it doesn't overpower it. And in essence, we've actually pulled the roof down so it wouldn't compete with that roof, the existing roof line. Also, the setback we discussed, and we understand the comment on the setback. We've talked about going 8 inches, and we're showing 4, and but we'd like to stress that every inch counts in this addition. Obviously, there are maybe options that we could maybe recess that we did talk about, where the new addition adjoins the existing addition. We might be able to recess a little bit there and create a sense of separation there. That's an issue. And then the third thing that we did add was we had 2 windows, which was similar on the east elevation, on the west elevation, and we replaced those 2 windows with a pair of French doors and a balcony. That just being, it's a small structure and it has a wonderful garden out on the side, and to be able to enjoy that garden and experience it, we felt that the French doors would add a good feature to the structure. So we feel that we're trying to adhere to the guidelines as best we can as far as the height and the separation. And as far as the French doors, I'm a little unclear if there was an objection to the first floor French doors or both French doors. That was, if I could get a little clarification on that, it would be helpful.
All right.
Anything else?
I think, as we said, every inch does count, and I think we originally had the structure kind of even with the old and the new, and I think we pulled it in 4 inches on each side to kind of give it that separation. I'm not sure pulling in a foot we can necessarily get a stairway that then gets up to the second floor. We have a stairway to the second floor now, but it's nowhere near code and, as we talked about previously. So the 4 or 8 or whatever inches is somewhat meaningful. I'm not sure if, possibly Ms. Kerr said this last time, I don't recall, whether we might be able to pull it in 4 inches on one side or six, or even have it even on one side that's not visible to the common, neighbor, or, and have it, 4 or 6 or 8 inches on the other side, whether that's even an option, and I'm not sure what that then does to the roof. So I'm not sure if the, quote, the old and the new separation, if it works on, if you want something bigger than 4 inches, like 6 inches or 8 inches, if we can kind of recapture that on the other side, it might be helpful, again, still on getting that stairway up. The stairway really is the major issue, I think, in terms of the way things kind of turn out. I don't recall the doors being an objection the last time we met for conceptual review, and as Frank said, whether this was a second floor issue or whether there's now a new issue on the first floor. Again, I don't recall that. I don't know. I don't recall us having an objection to the doors as they were drawn. We've addressed the roof issue. So, yeah, I think we tried to address each of the issues. So.
All right. Well, staff, would you like to respond to the French door issue first, or would you like us to go ahead?
The introduction of the French doors to the second floor is new, correct? And that is largely what we're responding to, because it doesn't relate to the opening rhythm of the main mass. On the first floor, I think it attenuates the problem now. When you try to put one on top of the other, they both become somewhat problematic because you just are ending up with the relationship of the solid to the voids, that being wall to window, being considerably different on that elevation. So certainly the second floor one introduces new problems relative to the guidelines and the balcony concept. I know we talked just briefly about the stoop, the overhang previously, and staff had suggested that wasn't really perhaps appropriate in a treatment on the first floor. But now looking at them with the introduction of the second floor, the whole unit, the whole rhythm there of second and first floor window and / door treatments, it's really become, it's door treatments also serving as windows in that essence, has become kind of overscaled to the volume of the wall area that you have there, taking into account the character of the historic mass on the front and its masonry to window opening rhythms.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kerr. Mr. Hosfield, would you like to jump in?
Not yet.
Okay. Mr. Magrish?
Okay. I thank you. Your response to the roof height issue, I think, has been very well done, and I still think you have a very functional plan. I completely understand your interest in having the French doors and the balcony on the second level, because I'm sure it'd be very charming to be able to open up a bedroom and sort of look out at your garden. But I think that Ms. Kerr is correct that the size of the opening is just a little bit overpowering for that elevation. I have no problem with the French doors on the first level, because I think that they represent more or less a traditional form of modern design, and clearly are not historic in their form. My suggestion would be that you maybe go back and possibly duplicate the two windows that you have on the other gable above the on the west elevation, just so that you pick up a little bit more of the rhythm of the existing structure. The offset between the new and the old, it certainly does not meet the guidelines or the standards, but I do think that because of the fact that this is being built on the footprint of an existing piece that is coming down due to structural reasons, and the fact that it's a change of material between the new and old, that minimal setback, I think, would be adequate enough to illustrate what's new and what was existing. So, I personally don't see that as a major issue, and even though it does not meet the absolute ladder of what the guidelines intend.
The other thing that occurs to me with the setback, and something we discussed in the conceptual review, was where having at least a foot setback on other projects is a greater concern, because a lot of times the eaves will meet in that corner, and it makes for an odd condition. Whereas in this project, because the slopes are perpendicular to each other, you avoid that problem. And I agree with Rob there that the setback, typically I think we'd push harder for it, but because there is a change in materials and you do have that justification of the existing foundations, that's pretty sound reasoning to me to vary from the guidelines in this instance. I'm not, the second door, the second floor door that's been added is, like Betty said, more noticeable than the windows. The first floor door was a step away from the original door, but at least there was the tops lined up with each other, and it gave it a sense of belonging and a relationship. I tend to agree that the second floor door doesn't carry over the same relationship to the existing structure. And that's, I agree with the staff on their thoughts on the door for that reason.
Thank you. I think that everything that my colleagues have said and that the staff has talked about this evening is spot on. I guess procedurally, there are a couple of different options for you all to consider. We could continue this hearing until the next meeting to give you all an opportunity, should you choose to refine some designs, get those back to staff, and then to pick up the conversation again at the next hearing. Or we could go ahead and and act this evening. That would certainly either would be something I think that the board could entertain this evening. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you would like to talk about it for a minute, that's fine.
No, I think we're prepared to talk. Yes, I think if you can accept the original plan, the original window plan, which showed similar windows on the east elevation to the west elevation on the second floor, I think that would be okay.
Just to be, I think legally the revised plans would have to be turned in, and to give the staff opportunity to review them.
You can make a condition
they
of your
meet.
action that the window treatments on that elevation come to the staff for review and approval prior to issuance of this permit, if you want that to be a consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Kerr. You all are comfortable?
Of course, what we'd like to do is start the demolition and
Sure.
the construction just because of winter and such. So, however it works, it sounds like if we're able to put back the windows as they were, that it would be acceptable, and that just whatever allows us to start the process, I think, is what we.
I'd like to clarify also, in the previous submittal that we discussed in the conceptual review, there was an eyebrow below those windows and above the French doors, the first floor French doors. Is that in consideration at this time, or not. It was not reviewed by staff, so we don't have their comments on that. If you recall, Betty, and it's actually on the renderings that were part of this submittal. I don't think they were updated.
We had you mean the little eyebrow over the first floor French doors or whatever? Yeah, there was, one comment was it just needed some work. I mean, it wasn't, there was really not a definitive statement either way. We can submit that to the staff if that's appropriate or acceptable to the board as well.
As I recall, the staff's comment about that previously was that it did need further study and
Didn't relate to the awning over the original door, I think was our problem during the conceptual review.
right. So certainly as it was previously and is still in some of the material here, I think there are some design issues yet to be resolved on that. I would not, as staff, be able to recommend it be approved as was part of the drawings talked about last time, and it's not on your drawings that you are acting on today.
Is it reasonable to add as a condition that the windows appear on the second floor as they're shown on the opposite elevation, and then the awning come back to staff for review, and if there are any questions, we can review just the awning? Or is that too strange to have?
No, that could be the way the condition could be. Currently, as proposed, it has no awning on these drawings, and those are the ones you're acting on. So if an awning is to be introduced, you could either empower the staff to review an awning as it comes forward, but it's a little unusual to, say, review an element that's not on the drawings. Further review an element not on the current drawings being acted on. So
Again, I'm not sure, though. Go ahead.
Well, would it be possible, like you mentioned, could we, in the essence of time, for construction's sake, have that awning as a separate item, and then give tentative approval based on the windows being replaced, and then address that as a separate issue?
The awning, which is really it's a pent roof, just so that there's a clarification, because awnings
overhang.
are,
Well, yeah.
That's just for the record, really. Awnings can be various materials. I think that if you're interested in having that particular architectural feature on the house, or that style or that type, you can submit that separately.
As a revision to the
As a
CRA.
revision. But if the issue is tonight is specifically the eliminating the French door and putting the original design for the windows, or the design that we had the conceptual review on about just those windows in the gable on the second floor, I think that might be something we could act on with the details going back to the staff prior to the issuance, which might help you speed up the project a little bit.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Can I switch to conceptual review for a moment, and not necessarily, would you prefer not to see some type of overhang, or what is your thought about some type of little?
I think the methodology-wise, the best way to handle that, we can discuss that as staff with you, separate from this meeting. But broadly, as it was previously drawn, I think that is not within the guidelines. So I do think some different solution needs to be come up with, and we'll be glad to talk to you further about some thoughts about maybe how to accomplish that. Also, could the staff note one other thing? I don't believe this plan has been through many, if any, of the other pieces of the government's reviews, the engineering and building inspection and so forth. And so we probably should add a condition, which is very standard, to the action to have any changes that would be called upon because of those reviews to come back for review through the staff and/or the board as necessary, but we would hope it would be as staff.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kerr. I think we have a motion in progress here. Let's see. Is anyone in the audience here to speak to this case this evening? Don't see anyone. Do you gentlemen have any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Yes, absolutely.
That was the height of the setbacks. Does it say lower than? Don't know if I need it. Yeah, thanks. That's not the original structure.
It is 2A, 4B as well. Exterior wall should be stepped in. Roof line should be stepped down from the peak of the existing roof line. So that existing main roof remains evident. Because of the
They're separated. I shall do my best.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. I'm certainly willing to entertain a motion regarding this case, please.
Mr. Chair, in regards to case number 188003222-D, I move that the application be approved with the following conditions. Well, first of all, that the height of the addition be accepted based on guideline 2A 4B, which says that the height should be lower or step back. I believe the intention of this is met because of the difference. The difference is maintained between the addition by the separation in the roofs as well as the differing slopes. I also believe we should accept the setback at 4 inches as opposed to 12 inches in plan. Also mentioned in 2A 4B, I believe the intent is met by differing materials as well as the 4-inch setback. I'd also like to add the condition that second floor doors be removed. Windows on the second floor west elevation are to be installed and to match the second floor east elevation. Any addition of a pent roof be reviewed by staff and come to BOAR if required. as well as any changes as a result of code review, come back to the staff for review.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second the
Thank you,
motion.
Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.
And again, I want to thank you for taking on this project. It'll be very nice when you finish.
All right. Go back to 449 West 3rd Street, again in the North Side Historic District. Scope of the work is to install, change openings, and construct stoop or steps. Has that applicant present? Okay. Staff is recommending approval is submitted with 3 conditions. 1, that the doors and side lights be a full light design, no buttons. 2, the transom light be installed above the door side light unit to achieve the same head height elevation as that of the casement windows. And the final condition, that the final revised drawings of the rear elevation showing the transom and new roof line be submitted to staff prior to issuance of the COA. Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions regarding this case?
I do. I believe we've addressed these issues and thoroughly exhausted conversation on them up to this point, and I feel comfortable in making a motion based on staff's recommendations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosfield. Do you have any comments, Mr. Magrish?
I agree with Mr. Hosfield. The only design issue that I still have an issue with are the side lights on the French door. I think it should be French door with a transom and those side lights to emphasize the verticality of the opening.
Is anyone in the audience here to speak to this case this evening? Again, this is 449 West 3rd Street in the North Side Historic District. Okay. Don't see anyone moving. If anyone's prepared to make a motion, I think we certainly entertain it.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve start at the beginning here. Per case number 188000449-C at 449 West 3rd Street, make a motion to approve the application following with the addition of the staff's recommendations and one additional condition that altering the one staff recommendation that side lights not be allowed.
So if I'm, just to restate, Mr. Magrish, you're changing staff condition 1 to read doors be a full light design, and changing staff condition 2 to read transom light be installed above door unit to achieve same head height elevation as that of the casement windows, retaining condition 3 verbiage as in the report.
That
Are you
is
also deleting the side lights?
deleting the side lights?
All right, so condition 1
Would be
should
doors,
be that,
period. No
doors
side
be a full light design with no buttons and there be no side lights.
That would be correct.
Okay.
And similarly, that the side light language be eliminated from condition 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our final official business this evening is to review and approve the 2010 Board of Architecture Review meeting schedule. That was included with our packets. If anyone has no objections, would certainly entertain a motion to accept them.
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. That closes the official public hearing this evening. We're now going to move into less formal A conceptual review at 272 Kentucky Avenue. The scope of the work is this is in the Aylesford Historic District, is to demolish a roof and construct a second floor. And Ms. Armstrong, who would be so kind as to run us through the project.
So this is the property at 272 Kentucky. At the last meeting, November 28th, this case went before the board for a full-blown, but then it was suggested that it be go before the board at this time for a conceptual review and just sort of familiarize yourself with the structure here. The applicant has come back with 3 different options for an addition onto the structure. Of course, the work would be partially demoing the roof and then adding a second floor and filling in some space. And the applicant has 3 proposed plans. Just sort of to remind you of what this looks like now. This is the existing condition. Here's the roof plan and site plan as you see as it is now. Here's the proposed, and this is existing. Fine, here's the existing roof plan. This is option, this is still existing elevation, sorry. Option A. So as you can see, this area is being reworked to fit in with the gable system. Option B. And this option doesn't go all the way up to create a full second story all the way across and creates dormers to achieve the head height. And this creates, again, dormers on either side, reworking the existing second story and then creating another second story. Guidelines are included for your reference. Since this is a conceptual review, staff has no findings at this time. However, items to be considered include: is it appropriate to add an addition onto this already altered house? Option A is the complexity of the proposed addition, form, shape, height, scale, and site utilization compatible with the existing adjacent historic structure. Option B, the same, is the complexity of the proposed addition, form, shape, height, scale, site utilization compatible with the existing adjacent historic structures. And again, it's option C, that is the complexity of the proposed addition, form, shape, height, and scale of the site utilization compatible with existing and adjacent historic structures. 5 is the roof line form appropriate for the structure. 6 is the proposed addition contemporary design compatible with adjacent surrounding structures. 7, do the proportion, directional emphasis, and rhythm of the proposed addition reflect the predominant proportion, emphasis, and rhythm of adjacent surrounding buildings. 8, are the dormers appropriate in scale, size, proportion to established patterns of openings in adjacent surrounding buildings. 9, are the openings compatible in scale, size, proportion to established patterns of openings in the adjacent surrounding buildings. 10, do the architectural details, articulation, and proposed addition relate in scale, rhythm, proportion, and texture to the existing adjacent surrounding buildings. And 11, are the materials in scale with the buildings where they are located. What I didn't mention is that they are proposing to use hardy plank and with redwood trim. And that was different from what we heard last time, so I'll just tell you that. And the applicant is here.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Ma'am, if you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Lynn Pettigo, I'm at 559 North Broadway.
Thank you very much. Would you like to talk about the plans first, or would you like us to respond to them first?
I'll listen to your responses.
Okay, let's go. Mr. Hosfield, would you like to?
Should we maybe pick one to discuss first?
Let's go. Let's start with number
With A.
with A.
I guess A was my way of trying to disguise that thing on the rear.
Yikes.
I mean, just briefly looking through the plans that you have submitted.
We're putting A back up so that you all
Okay, great. I think, just sort of architecturally, I think this first plan, the A plan, probably is the cleanest of the three that you have. And, I commend you for taking this on, because this is very, very difficult. I think that, given the unusual conditions going on here, there are some elements that don't, let's say, meet the letter of the guidelines, but neither does most of the structure. So I think that sort of using the addition to create a unified element of the roof, which doesn't, it really doesn't appear as a sort of a full second floor addition, which it more or less is. I think that given what you have to work with, that is a fairly successful solution. The back dormer is very large, and I don't know exactly, I don't have a specific idea for you, but if there was any way just to break up the mass just a little bit, that wouldn't totally ruin your floor space. But if there was just some way to sort of just break that up just slightly, that would be the only real change that I could see that you might need to work on for now. Anyway, I'll pass it on.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you in what you're saying, the need to break up the rear elevation enough that it relates better to the rest of the house. But what occurs to me is that it's already so jumbled and broken up. I hesitate to ask you to do that more. So I'm kind of on the fence either way at this point as far as the rear elevation goes as proposed in packet A here. I guess I agree with Rob. It doesn't relate as well as the other three elevations, in that it appears to be a massive two-story unified front, where the other elevations don't have that appearance. The other thing I think we need to discuss early in the conversation, because it, as I recall, it was the staff's primary objection, when we saw this at the last meeting was their thoughts on an addition by adding a second story to a building or adding a new story to the building. And I feel like because of the existing portions of second floor that we're not adding a whole new floor but filling in area. But as I recall, there was a different interpretation of that at the last meeting. Is that something we're going to be able to overcome? Because if not, that kind of blows the whole project out of the water.
Well, the staff's comments previously reflect that in accordance with the guidelines, adding a second floor to a building that historically / architecturally is of the character this building's intended to be would not be appropriate. The changes that have occurred to it have got these pop-ups, obviously, that certainly would not have been within the guidelines, but that's neither here nor there because it's taken as it exists at the time the district's created, as we know. But having said that, it's still, in the staff's interpretation, not within the guidelines to further what is already an inappropriate alteration to this building. So furthering it being to enhance or, I guess, expand what's already not compatible to the character of this building is not within the guidelines, in the staff's opinion. Putting it right back in the board's hands relative to measuring this specific situation as it is before you.
So I guess, as a board, are we willing to accept this addition that infills space between previous second floor additions because the end result is better than what we started with?
And that's certainly something that the board is empowered to consider.
So what do you think, board members?
I'm just kind of stuck with the fact that they're elderly people and they want to be able to utilize the headspace upstairs, and we're really not adding very much space at all. It's and creating that illusion on the side to try to hide that tower on the rear, and to be able to get to the side gable that I proposed on the left elevation. That gives me enough headroom to get around the kitchen, which is on the other side, and to also access the hallway that leads you from the rear to the front. And we've only enlarged that ridge, connector ridge, just enough to get full head height to get from one end of the house to the other. That's why I made sure it's set below the gable on the rear, the connector. And then, of course, we created false windows with shutters to fill in the large voids of siding.
I have to say I appreciate that, and that it's one of the things being done here to kind of rein it back in from being a jumble to having a sense of regular rhythm. So I'm actually okay with that.
The only thing I could do on that rear shed is perhaps shed the sides instead of them gabling the second. If you looked at the side of it, you wouldn't see it as a shed. It would shed back so that the appearance from the rear would make the roof come down instead of being so boxy. If that would help.
To add a hip to it?
That would be kind of a hip on that 412 shed on the sides.
I think that, that you could look at that and see if it really does do what you think it would do. I I know I said, that it's sort of big and boxy, but I actually think that the cleaner line of having the shed come off it may just be better just to sort of keep that kind of thing. But I'd certainly study it a little bit, just to sort of see how it works.
I got it. I have to tell you, I just threw it in while we were talking about it, and the ridge going across the whole width of the house is still so long that I'm not sure
That would make any
there's any
difference.
gained
Right.
advantage by doing that.
I just really need the space for them, and
Well, I mean, on that rear elevation, at least in the new dormer area, there might be some possibility of just sort of not physically breaking it up, but maybe in detail, looking at some architectural elements that you might just sort of, it'll kind of visually.
well, there's another. We could also have taken a smaller gable between the two sets of center windows on the second floor to break the roof line up.
Yeah,
That's an option.
Yeah, I mean, you again, I mean, look at it, see if that works.
Because
I'm
on the
not so sure.
Because on the side elevation, what I did was work this thing. I don't know if I got a pointer where the rear gable is. I did a vertical strip to break the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, that might be something that you then play with on the other elevation as well. That might be a way of just sort of breaking up the line of the mass and then integrate it into the form of the window. I'm thinking, just as an example, of the house on it's South Mill. It's called Rokeby Hall. It's owned by the Methodist Church. They did an addition on the back that as I remember, the elevation that faces the parking lot has sort of a massive shed dormer piece that has sort of a nice window rhythm to it. Yeah, that's the right house. Okay.
You're on the right description
Yeah.
of what happened over
So
there.
you might, if you're over that way, just take a look at what's going on that sort of the rear portion, and I mean, not necessarily to copy it exactly, but see how that was handled, and it might give you an idea of how to sort of look at that rear gable and the way the windows and the details have a rhythm that breaks it down. It's still pretty massive, but it seems smaller because of the way it's broken down.
I don't want to come way out from left field, but have you had any conversations with the owners about removing the stuff that's there close to back to where the original structure is and starting with a new addition and not retaining the stuff that was piecemealed on?
That would probably be a no.
You're doing so many other things. So there's a great deal of roof being removed. What if we just chop the tower off?
Well, if we chop the tower off, then we're killing any headroom upstairs.
Well, no. I'm not saying you don't put anything back in its place, but I mean, it's a real bear as far as designing around. So much of your effort is spent. How do I incorporate the space of the tower that's there? Now, granted, this goes right back at, are we doing a second floor addition, or are we adding on to an existing second floor space? If we get rid of the second floor addition, I don't know. That might be another problem, but
I never come down here with anything easy.
no.
Well, actually, in this scheme anyway, you're demoing most of it. So, it's it wouldn't be out of the realm to just go ahead and take the rest of it out. The one thing that could do is allow you to just ever so slightly pull in that end gable so that you've got more expression of the slope of the roof in the back, and it actually becomes more gable-esque rather than sort of a straight facade. And yeah, you lose a few feet out of your second floor, but I don't
Well,
think it would be a
the problem
significant
with
amount.
that is there's a staircase in this rear that starts at the bottom of the rear elevation and goes up and then turns up the side and then turns back into the house.
Is that shown in plan?
I don't know if it's on the second floor or not.
Do you mind just sort of drawing that in, and then Randy can put it up on the...
It just seems like this might be a really good opportunity to erase some things that were done to the structure in the past and come up with some, completely redesign the space and really come up, with some efficient use of this brand new space that you would be creating.
This is where we're coming from.
I've got a small area where that stairwell is in the rear and it backs right up to the kitchen. And the kitchen's just been done. There's a laundry room. It's very tight space. I mean, I have to deal with the inside and the out, so it's kind of, I don't.
We understand it. It certainly has to work when it's done. On the interior, did we get the stairs drawn in there somewhere?
The projector.
Your technology.
I mean, I'm trying to get to scale, but it's a small space, and I'm going to have to rework the stairs anyway. But I don't know of any way to.
Which end is the foot end of the stairs?
The rear wall.
The rear wall is the bottom of the stairs.
Yes, it is.
Come up.
So it actually sort of comes up into that space, sort of at the
It comes
third
up into
mark.
the back side of that existing two-story tower, and has to come back up in order to get to the middle of the connector to get.
And that's the primary access to,
That's the only access.
to the entire second level of the house?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So there's no stairway in the front?
No.
Let's see.
I mean, the only thing I can do is go back to them and say, if we can pull these dormers in just a little bit, would that help? And then if I can work the stairs in to make it efficient and work for what they need, that's fine. But I've got to make sure that the stairway, if I rework it, is going to work.
Yeah.
You're making these stairs wider too, correct? Was that part of what we heard before?
She's got to be able to get something to get her up them.
Gotcha.
There's not a better place for them anywhere in the house.
There is no room. There's not even a hallway, really.
Well, it seems that if you're going to have to reconfigure them, I mean, even just making them wider means you're basically going to have to rebuild
Yes.
most of the stair. If there is some way to reroute them so that you could pull that in a little bit, and maybe have them arrive in a better location for your second floor plan. I mean, it's certainly worth the study. I think it wouldn't hurt to take a look at it and see what could be done. Because I mean, if you're going all that effort, to widen them and sort of rebuild them, it's sort of, this would be the great time to go ahead and make them really work.
I mean, it's possible I could come in a foot on each side, but probably not much more than that, just by seeing the space and
Yeah.
knowing what I know about it.
Well, I mean, again, I think it definitely would be worth studying it, trying the plan, see if it does function, and of course, and making sure that it meets the requirements and all the codes and stuff, so. It may require a second conceptual review, which I know delays the project a bit, but I think that it's certainly well worth it for just this kind of reason.
I truly think that when I come back, I'll have this figured out to the point that it either has to work that way or there's no other way to do it. And I mean, whatever I can
Right.
do, I'll do, but I don't see any reason to do another conceptual. I'm either going to get it or I'm not. And I just don't want to waste any more of my client's time or money,
I understand.
and I have to.
Can the board members comment about the new eyebrow business and your take on that?
Across the rear elevation.
It's actually on 2 elevations. Is that correct? Lynn?
Yes.
It's on the rear and the, no, I've lost my sheet. Which is the other,
Well, there is an eyebrow on each side of those elevations on the gables. And then there is across the rear.
yeah, there we go. It's on the left, your left elevation sheet, A41,
I'd say,
as well as the rear.
if you're able to pull those ends back, I'd try to pull that. My reaction would be to extend that eyebrow too, so there's more separation.
I'm not sure I follow you.
Right here.
Make it bigger.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, isn't really kind of the historical issue is that what's left of I believe the only original gable, although it's been altered, doesn't have the eyebrow? Is that,
It doesn't.
yeah, it
It's-
does.
I don't think.
I mean,
From the
it's
pictures.
kind of shown like that's the porch roof that goes across.
That's the
But in the original configuration of this house, most likely, that gable on the front was, one form. It didn't have the horizontal element.
Could have had a horizontal element running across it, as in where a box gutter line would be continuing on around, but we don't necessarily know that.
I don't suppose there's any pictures of this place.
Not that I know of.
Pre-redo.
From the 80s? From when it was surveyed. So we'll pull that out and have it for you if you like.
Yeah, I think that just as sort of a precedent to see if that's pre-redo.
You mean the front elevation?
No, I'm just saying, I'm talking about the gable on the front, which has been substantially altered. But if there is some photographic evidence that shows that there was either an eyebrow or a line or not, then that will give you your architectural clue of where to go with the new gables on the side and back. Well, that's the other thing. We'll
Because
find out.
essentially you're just creating an extended overhang.
In looking at other houses that are basically built like this one would have been with the front porch, there were gables, but there were either small windows or, minute details within those gables.
Right.
I think the gable was probably there.
The front gable. Yeah, I agree. I think its form was there. Now,
Its
what
form
it
was
is
there,
now was clearly not part of the original design. But I'm
There's a
just
couple on
looking
Park
at something
Avenue
that
that
might
look
have some architectural clue that in photographic
It has
form.
a horizontal band all the way across. This is off, and we'll just pass this around for the board members. Have you got it? Have they got it in their packet? It's the fuzzy sort of overhead aerial / aerial. And, but you can see next door, the house to the right as you face these houses.
Right, and it does have something going across.
It has the horizontal band across the header, or the header of the first floor. We're looking actually at the neighbor. This is not the same house. But what we're
Right.
talking about is
Well, those
that.
those three houses in a row that are in this picture, although, I mean, there are definite differences, they're similar in form, and my guess would be
Right.
a good clue of what was the original configuration of the house that you're looking at right now.
So is that a good thing in regard to my eyebrows or a bad thing?
All things are good and bad. No, I think that it just gives you some precedent to work on it.
It's tough to tell.
Oh, there's some- yeah.
Something. There's at least a difference in color and material at the gable on the neighbor's house.
Sorry, tell them the next one.
This house.
Yeah.
Creating these overhangs, eyebrows to me are in the roof system, but anyway, that's okay.
I don't like the term either, but for lack of a better.
Can we agree on overhang just for the sake of
Overhang.
commonality of a discussion? I don't think it matters what we label them technically. Essentially, you're just extending the roof line to soften the presence
Break
of
the two-story
Yeah.
madness, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and that condition does exist on the house as it is. On the left side from the rear. I would say, if anything, we're repeating that process in the house as it exists, if you want to do that. I think it serves a purpose to break the mass up. I'm okay with it myself.
Primarily, I just wanted to get some feedback from y'all about the concept of that feature as a sort of softening method, I guess I'd say.
Well, I'm glad we have some agreement on which one of the three is more likely to succeed.
Yeah, I'm not sure how productive. Well, we can talk about B and C.
I mean,
But-
if you want to, I think that
I think A's.
A is really your most successful.
That's why it's A.
But let's, I guess, as far as things you can move forward with, I guess we need to just discuss our major objections, so you have some goals in mind as a takeaway from this meeting. And it sounds like the common statement from all of us is the back end of the house still needs, somehow it needs to relate better to what is happening on the other three sides of the house. I understand the challenges of the location of the stairwell, as well as the existing tower. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I know that's the problem. I wish that helped you more. Sorry.
Staff? You have any?
Nobody wants to deal with this project.
Again, I think that the staff would be challenged to support any of the three relative to the base premise of the guidelines in terms of sort of increasing the problem. Having said that, if the board is inclined to allow more mass and so forth to start to try to connect some of this stuff up, if one were asked which of the three approaches, I would say A, as a methodology, is the least intrusive, perhaps is the word I'm looking for, way to try to accommodate some of what you're talking about. But I think you're aware from our comments that it will be very difficult for the staff, and we'll be glad to review whatever when you bring it, to get to a point that we could recommend within the guidelines this concept. But we will review in all seriousness, of course, as you would know we will, whatever you bring in with an eye to could it be accomplished within the guidelines.
Ms. Armstrong did bring up the point that you change the material of the cladding. I noticed there was a call out, or not a call out, but in the project description, the vinyl soffits.
They don't have to be vinyl soffits. I've just,
I'm just.
I mean, I caught that when I was going through the notes and with the hardy plank and the redwood, then that's not necessarily a good idea to have a vinyl.
Yeah, and vinyl's just is strictly
Oh, no.
not allowed material now.
Right.
And then just if you get to this stage, there'd need to be further details on the windows. It says match existing. Again, they couldn't be vinyl. And
They cannot be vinyl.
they cannot.
That's
be
what I'm
vinyl.
saying, yeah.
And I'm not sure what the guttering is, but if the gutters are vinyl, they would also need not to be.
Right.
Do y'all have any?
While you're on the topic of materials, as you would know, we also, I don't mean materials in the fabrication sense, but drawings. The process will need a section, of course,
Section.
as you would know to know.
Do you have anything else? Do you have any questions for us?
Other than I really need to get this done, and we need to, come to some conclusion. I'm knowing that I'm not going to get staff approval and coming back in here is obviously an obstacle. I'm just going to have to weigh my odds on that because
I think it's a very challenging project, and I think that something that I would encourage you to discuss is, I understand that the owners have just made an investment in redoing some of the interior spaces. It would be easier to make the project fit within the guidelines to be able to remove the existing additions back down to close to the historic mass and then pretty much start over.
but that would kill every space upstairs.
Which may not be a bad thing.
Well, they already use it as living space and bedrooms, what little space they have. So they've invested in the upstairs as well. I just think going back to them saying we need to take this back the way it was would be kind of asinine because the front of the house resembles nothing of historic nature. Nothing. I have to tell you what I think.
Sure. And
I understand everybody's caught between a rock and a hard spot, but if you look at the architecture surrounding that house, it's all the same thing.
It does put us in a weird spot to deal with a neighborhood that hasn't always been a historic
Correct.
neighborhood. And that's where we are here. We're pinched between something we probably never would have approved. Now we have to figure out how do you work with that. And I think these issues are the types of things that could possibly buy you the latitude you need for what you have as far as a second-story addition, or at least that would be part of my consideration. I can't say that as a rule, or, I know the staff will still recommend
I know.
disapproval. But we understand, we sympathize with what you're saying as far as its historic nature and how much of that has already been taken away from. What are the dates as far as we're not meeting a second time?
We were
in
just looking
November?
about that, to submit for a full-blown formal hearing. Tomorrow's the first deadline. We're sure you'll be ready for that. But seriously, the next deadline is December the 17th for the January 13th meeting. So that's your, you would have a little
Well,
less than a month.
At this point, they're probably not going to be able to start construction until early spring anyway, just obviously.
So a mid-December deadline, an end-of-December deadline, and so forth.
I would rather have the mid-December
That's
deadline.
totally your choice.
Yeah.
But the next available would be, cycle would be December 17th.
Right.
Does anyone in the audience have any comments? No. Okay.
Let's go home.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Pettigo. And thank you, staff, and thank you, board members. Thank you, audience. Would certainly entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second?
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Controls it. I think it's the lit one.